What point did I realize that I was doing serious damage to my marriage and decided to make changes? Well, very shortly after getting married. So I've been married for 11 years. My husband and I have been together for almost 17 years. Yeah, almost 17 years. And very quickly after getting married, that was 2014. Very quickly, I'd say the early 2015, I realized things were headed south very quickly, and realized that we were going to be headed for a divorce. And in my experience and beliefs, I believe God intervened and performed a divine intervention. That in early 2015, I met my mentor. And my mentor taught me that no one else had ever taught me, and it was a awakening moment. He taught me I was the problem in my life. And that if I was the problem in my life, then I was empowered to be the solution. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was something that I didn't realize, I can see in hindsight, but it was something I was craving in my life. I had been going to talk therapy for on and off for about 6 or 7 years. I did a lot of spiritual paths and modalities. I was a yoga teacher. I taught meditation. You name it, I tried it. And I was just spinning in circles of my stories of why I was insecure, why I lacked confidence, why I didn't feel like I knew who I was, why I didn't know where my life was going, why I didn't feel my marriage was working out very well. I had a story for everything. And it all pointed outward in blaming either my upbringing or my parents, or, because I was into some weird things back then, blaming past lives. You name it, I could find something to blame my experience on. I had all kinds of wacky ideas of why I had turned out the way that I had, and why my life was turning out the way that it was, and my marriage turning out the way that it was. And so there was a part of me, because I was trapped in all those stories and trapped in all the blame, that I was craving somebody to tell me I was the problem, because it set me free. When it became just me, that I was the problem, I am the problem, it set me free from all the blame. It set me free from all the stories I had created that I was swimming in my head, that were actually holding me down, keeping me very small, and preventing me from knowing who I was and the potential of who I am in my life. So as I continued to work with that philosophy that I am the problem, and it just like an instantaneous point of freedom in my life, as I said, to cut the ties of all the stories of blame, I continue to work with that philosophy and concept, and that quickly translated into my marriage. And as I built a foundation in me to start to take accountability of myself as the problem in my life, then it laid a foundation that then I was open to seeing that in my marriage with my husband. And I had grown enough to a point where I was ready and mature enough to take that concept into my relationship with my husband and begin to look at myself and how I was showing up as a wife. And that's where I then began to learn from my mentor the psychology of relationships, that every relationship is a reflection of me, which meant my marriage was a reflection of me. And while I was so busy and focused on wanting my husband to change, that the truth, a fundamental truth, was the only person I have control over to change is me. And that continuing to blame and focus on my husband and want him to change was deteriorating the marriage, because my husband, as a good man, bought into the blame which presents in a marriage from a woman with a good man as emasculation, weakening, shaming, making our husbands wrong and bad for who they are. That's the message we constantly send when we want them to change. That was the message I was constantly sending my husband, wanting him to change. And as a good man, they're susceptible to believing that they are the problem. We're so convincing in our stories of blame, and then that turns into gaslighting our husbands, making them doubt their perception of the marriage, doubt their perception of reality in the relationship, that they begin to believe that they are the problem and begin jumping through the hoops that we set out for them. And it never makes a difference, and we continue to be unhappy, and we continue to move the goalpost further of what we need them to change, how we want them to change it, and then it never makes us happy. That's what I was doing to my husband, and it deteriorates a good man's sense of self and strength in himself, that then he begins to either withdraw or react back. And that can be, a lot of arguing. It can be just becoming really distant. It can result in fights or saying hurtful things. And that's where we lead our husbands to. We draw that out of them to point the finger out. And my husband was kind of a combination of both. I knew where to poke and push his buttons to get him to react. So then his reactions and arguments we would have, and slamming of doors and saying hurtful things, I could use as the ammo against him and validate and hunker down in my victim story. And then he also would withdraw and become very distant in the relationship and very disengaged, which then I could also use as ammo to point the finger out, see how you're the problem, with no awareness of myself and how I was contributing and creating that dynamic in our relationship. So as I began to see that psychology of relationships, that my internal experience was shaping the marriage and was a reflection of me and how I was showing up in the marriage, then I was able to get out of being a victim. I call that camp victim, putting the blame on my husband and pointing the finger out and wanting him to change. It got me out of camp victim into camp take responsibility, that I'm responsible. And in being married to a good man, I'm the problem with a good man. And that if I just change and work on myself to be happy in myself, in control of my emotional state, then my husband reacts positively and engages positively in the relationship as the good man that he is, by how I'm showing up. That's how much power we have as women in our emotional state and how we're feeling internally, that determines how the marriage or relationship that's going to go. And I had the temper tantrum of, that's not fair. I didn't ask for that level of responsibility. I didn't ask for that power or control, and had to get over it to see, but that's the reality. So I could fight it and be upset with it all day long, but that was the reality. And I quickly began to see that as I woke up to that dynamic of how I'm the problem as a woman with a good man, based on my emotional state, based on how I'm showing up, based on how I'm treating my husband. It became crystal clear, because I could see when I was in good space and in a good mood, I could see my husband relax in himself and be himself in the relationship, and we got along great. And then I could see when I was in bad space or bad emotional space and taking it out on him, that he would withdraw or disengage, or we would fight more. And it was crystal clear. I started to see it and learn it experientially in my marriage, and realizing that I can only be a happy wife and can't take responsibility. So for the women listening, you can only be a happy wife and can't take responsibility. Because if you're in camp victim, blaming your husband and thinking he's the problem, and you're not willing to look at yourself and you're trying to change him, we don't realize the lens and experience that we create in our marriage, blaming our husbands, and don't realize that the issues and reality that we create from that place of blame and place of camp victim isn't really happening. It's not real. We're creating the experience from camp victim and the negative lens that we create. And in camp victim, focused on our husbands, pointing the finger out, blaming them, there's no awareness of any role that we are playing in the issues of the marriage. There can be no awareness from pointing the finger out and blaming, because we're only focused on our husbands and only focused on what we think that they are doing wrong. And that's why we have to shift the perspective. And that's what I had to do, is to shift the perspective that I can only change myself. So I'm the problem. And that works so well with a good man, because he wants us to be happy. He wants to do his best in the relationship. He wants to take accountability. He wants to lead the relationship in a positive direction. And when we get out of camp victim and stop treating them as poorly as we treat them from camp victim and start being kind, they're right back in the relationship, and they're the good man that we married. He didn't go anywhere. But when we live in camp victim, and constantly blaming them, then we ruin our own perception and lens of the man that we married, and we can't see them as that anymore. We only see them as the man that we've created through the blame and making them the problem. So I had to be woken up to see the, how do you put it? I had to be woken up to see the serious damage that I was doing to my marriage. And I had to decide that I wanted to change, that it was important to me to change. And now that's led me on to this path of learning and growing into a happy wife. And it's a long-term commitment. It's a long-term journey. And it is why I call my channel the Red Pill, because I was red pilled to see the truth of the situation, that I was the problem in the marriage. And the red pill only works to wake us up as women, to realize the serious damage we're doing in our relationship and marriage. It only works if a woman wants to change and wants to be a wife and wants to be accountable to herself. It would only have worked for me to become a happy wife and continue to commit to doing the things I need to do to be a happy wife and continue growing and learning in that process. It would only worked for me to wake up and see the damage that I was causing, because I wanted to change and I wanted to see it. And once I saw it, I could not unsee it. Once I saw it, I could not unsee how I was showing up in the relationship and what I was creating and the damage that I was causing. So I had to want to be accountable to myself. I had to want to change. And that's why it worked for me. And that's why it works. And that now that's my path. That's exactly what my mentor helped me with, is now helping other women with that very same processing and getting onto the path of becoming a happy wife and taking that journey. And the only women that will hear me are those that want to be woken up and are open-minded and can see themselves and then want to take the steps to change. You can't force someone to see the reality or the truth of what's happening, or to look at themselves. You can't force a woman to see the things that I talk about. It will only make her rebel more. And why so many women get angry at my message and at me and won't watch my videos is because they're not in their marriages to be wives. The reason so many women get so upset and angry and won't take a second listen or even open the video and press play is because they didn't get married to be wives. They're not in their marriages to be wives. They're in their marriages to be taken care of and to play the blame game with no accountability for the way the marriage goes. They're trapped in what can my husband give and do for me? And have no sense of awareness or accountability of what can I do for my husband or my marriage? What do I need to be putting back in? And if they feel they're putting it back in, it's only from a place of what they want to be getting. And they're fooling themselves thinking they're putting anything in and showing up the way that they need to show up, or their husbands wouldn't send my videos. So I feel very blessed, very, very blessed to have wanted and continue to want to see the destructive behaviors I bring into my marriage as a woman and not make myself bad or wrong in that or beat myself up. Just know this is my path, and this is the path to being a happy woman and a happy wife for myself and for my husband, and feel that this was meant to be of what I'm supposed to be doing in my life, what God put me here to do. And it really boils down to having integrity. That integrity, I decided, was something that was important to me and something that I valued. And I had to reflect on what kind of person and woman do I want to be? What kind of character do I want to have? And recognizing the significant impact that has on my husband and has on my marriage. And that's how I got here, and continue to walk this path. And as I think I said a little earlier, I fall down, I stumble, I mess things up, and then I have to recommit, pull myself back up, and I have to keep taking the flashlight out. But I want to, because I want to look at the ways I'm showing up that are not conducive or constructive to having a healthy, happy marriage, because my marriage is really important to me, and being a wife and being a good wife and a happy wife is really important to me. So I want to keep growing and learning in that path. And that's what any woman who watches my videos or my content has to decide for herself. Because if you don't embrace the role of being a wife, if you don't want to look at yourself and be accountable, you will continue to be a victim and blame your husband, and you'll have a very miserable marriage, or it will end in divorce. And then you'll start the same thing with another man, and it will go down the exact same road. So that's how I got here. Hello again, and thank you for taking the time to watch today. For those women listening who know you are the problem and want a path forward to change your woman ways and truly be happy in yourself, I have a course for women called the Happiness Program. And in this course, you will learn how to resolve the unhealthy relationship you have with yourself so that you are empowered to be the solution to the issues and challenges in your marriage and in your life. You can find the link in the description below to learn more about the course and apply to enroll. For the good men listening who want a way to take your power back that you've unknowingly given away to your wife, I also have a course for you called the Marriage Rescue Course for Good Men Only. This course teaches you how to rebuild your strength and confidence as a good man so that you can navigate the relationship with your wife in a healthy, constructive way. You can also find the link in the description below to learn more about the course and apply to enroll. Thank you again, and I will see you all soon.